Hello and welcome to Setting the Stage. I'm Isaac Shaker, and this is episode 83, Call of Cthulhu's Garden, Hem and the Sprouting. Hem runs an actual play, not just one, but a couple different ones. This one's about the Sprouting, which is a Call of Cthulhu campaign. It's a bit different than other Call of Cthulhu campaigns, which are about like investigation during the late 1800s or early 1900s. This one's like a post-apocalyptic after the eldritch horrors have won. And they're plant-based, and that's why it's called The Sprouting. It's set in northern Italy, and you'll hear more about it as we get into the episode. So let's get the ads out of the way for the non-Patreon listeners and then get into it. I'm here today with Hem from the Sprouting actual play podcast that's made by Blighthouse Studio. Hi, Hem.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm awake. I've had much tea, but I understand it's earlier where you are, so I'm hoping you at least coffee and breakfast.
Yes, coffee for me. We got some new coffees that my wife got through her work that are really nice. It's like the flavored kind with caramel and cinnamon and stuff added to it.
I love that, but here in Iceland, it's coffee or it's nothing. There's no flavoring.
Yeah, harder to ship everything there that's made in the rest of the world.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. So if I want something fancy, I've got to go get the syrups, but they're, like everything else in Iceland, horrifically expensive. So I've just learned to like coffee with a little splash of milk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could do the spices yourself, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, again, it's just like, it's expensive and you get used to diesel after a while.
Right. Well, yeah, our usual opening question is, who are you outside of RPGs? So you live in Iceland, obviously. Tell us more.
Well, so outside of role-playing games, I used to work at Questportal, which is a virtual tabletop company. Before that, I used to work at the Beluga Sanctuary, which is on the island that I live on. So I actually live off of a tiny island off of mainland Iceland. Okay. And I used to be a duty manager there with like the belugas and the puffins and looking after the people. And that was kind of my job. Before that, I was an audiobook narrator when I still lived in the UK. And apart from that, I am also a trained mechanical engineer.
Wow, this is all sorts of stuff. Well,
a very varied life.
Any big audiobooks that people would know about?
Absolutely not. There's a few smut in there, so I definitely don't tell people what my recording name is. Okay,
all right. Well, I'll leave it then.
No big books, but lots of smaller books.
Okay, and working with whales is pretty cool. My sister did that for a college semester.
Oh wow. Yeah, we have beluga whales here on the island, and they have a little bay that they go out to in the summer when the bay is functional. But no, it was a lot of fun. They're called like the parrots of the sea, and they can mimic a lot of sounds. Cool. One of my jobs was I wore many hats working at places. It's a very small charity run, and people wear multiple hats. And one of mine was health and safety, and they could almost perfectly mimic the sound of like their med pool being raised, which you had to have a bunch of people make sure the pool rises and lowers properly. And I thought someone had done it without asking if it was okay to. So of course I ran out there. It's just the belugas dicking around. So I was like, oh, for you little melon heads.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my sister was with killer whales, so different, but
yes, yeah, very very different needs. The killer whale from Free Willy was actually looked after here on the island as well, in the bay that the belugas go out to.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that.
It's it's living here on the island is a little weird.
I was curious about something for Iceland. Like, what's the RPG space like there? And I guess even more for the island that you're on.
So the tiny island that I live on, there really isn't that much of a scene. It's just a few people would play home games, and that's kind of like pretty much the extent of it. However, Iceland, like most of the population, is based out in Reykjavik, and that's the capital. And
Right.
there is a big role-playing scene there. There are some, a few people are incredibly active. They have a role-playing society, and they've taken steps to go through and translate a lot of like the role-playing books. For example, the D&D books, they've gone through and translated into Icelandic. And that was just an effort on their behalf, just like, we want to play these games, we want to share them with the people that we care and love about. And although the perception that a lot of Icelanders speak English, not all of them do, and not to the extent where you want to roleplay in it. So yeah, that they went through that process and did that. So at least in Reykjavik, the scene is pretty big. They have a lot of like meetups that they do at least once or twice a month, and they're just open to like a lot of people, be it in Icelandic or English or even in Polish.
Polish? Is there a...
It's a pretty big Polish like community here in Iceland.
Okay. I didn't know that. Okay, yeah. English makes sense just because that dominates most of the world.
Yeah, and it dominates a lot of the role-playing books that are out there because it's kind of the bigger market, which is unfortunate because there are some incredible role-playing systems that I've heard of. Like, I believe that Symbaroum used to be out in Swedish only, and then got English translation by, I think it was Free League or Black Publishing. So, like, that's an amazing system. I've hung out with a couple of Swedes. I went over to Sweden for the express purpose of role-playing with a friend I know. And,
Wow.
there were so many Swedish books there that were role-playing systems. But there aren't quite as many in Icelandic because there's only about 350,000 native Icelanders, and think of how small the role-playing niche is even in English-speaking countries to then put that into a figure of people who play that in Iceland. So yeah, it's there are some systems, but there aren't a lot of them not well known.
Gotcha. Yeah, Vaesen, I think, is the one that I know the most from Nordic countries.
Yeah, Vasen's pretty good.
What brought you into role-playing games in the first place?
Way back when I was still in school, a group of friends brought me into a play-by-post back when forums were big. We're talking the other side of 20 years ago. Right. So we did that for a while, and then one of those friends came back from university quite a few years later and said, "Hey, I've been playing D&D. Do you want to play?" And yeah, we played, I think it was 4th or 3.5 edition, whichever ones that had everything is basically a card. We played that, and it was amazing. And then we just kept playing even when they returned to university, and I haven't really stopped since. So yeah, I've been doing this for well over half my life at this point.
Cool.
What about you? How did you get into this hobby?
I started when my dad and one of my friends' dads wanted to start playing again. I'm not sure why they wanted to. But they got me and a couple of my friends together, and we played through an old campaign that my friend's dad had made from when he was playing in college. He'd reused it a couple times. So I think we were the third group that ran through it. So it was interesting hearing how we solved a problem, and then after we dealt with that adventure, he'd say, "Oh, here's how the previous groups handled it and the differences." But so
you started off pretty homebrew as well then?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, his adventure, we did 3rd edition, but he'd originally written it for 2nd edition, I think. So he was converting a lot of the monsters, but they translate pretty well between editions. So it worked out.
Holy cow, that's further back than I think I've played. I think I played AD&D once, and that system was not for me. I'm much happier with the quality of life upgrades there has been here and there. But I don't think I played anything back far as that, seriously, then probably 3.5.
Yeah, I think 3.5 still stands up and works, and I think there's been some changes that make sense with the Pathfinder 1st edition is probably a better choice if you wanted that same kind of system. But yeah, AD&D, there's so many just the THACO thing. I don't. It's such a confusing concept, and you explain it to people, and they're like, "Why aren't you just using armor class the way it is in later editions?" The math works out the same. It's just that it's easier to conceptualize in your head.
Was it the role players that came before us? They had to pay the price, and we got armor class.
Yeah. It's just wild that they did that for like 20 years without shifting it and making it work where you don't need to work with negative numbers and other things like that. It's just, yeah. Oof. Well, yeah. How did you start GMing after you started playing?
Oh man, I think just after I turned 20, we just finished a campaign just around when 5 came out. And we had just finished like a fantasy thing, and I was like, hey, I really want to do like a Fallout game. I love Fallout. I love Fallout 3. I love like the whole lore around it. And it would be awesome if one of you guys could run or find a game that works in that. And the guys I was playing with, like, nah, you do it. So I did some reading around. I found Exodus, which was the old Fallout RPG system before their deal fell apart. So they turned it into Exodus instead and had to change super mutants to like, experiments or something like that. The same with ghouls became rotters instead. So I found this system, which admittedly is quite bad. The version I had of it, the character sheet was literally unreadable with about 50 skills, and it was a nightmare. So I picked it up, I scrapped everything I didn't like, and I wrote a Fallout campaign from scratch with a system that none of us really knew. And
Cool.
That game we played for about a year and a bit. And it was probably one of the only games in our home table of about 8 people where we were there almost literally every single week, and where everyone was kind of paying a lot of attention to what was going on. And it was one of the most thrilling games I think I have ever run, probably because it was my baby. It was my first game. But it was a lot of fun, and like all of us just have like such good memories of it. So yeah, that was my first foray. I do not recommend, if you are first time GMing, playing a system you don't know, homebrewing said system, and writing your own story. Holy crap, was that too much work?
I mean, yeah, I started with modules, and
that's smart.
Yeah, it was easier for me, definitely, but I also felt like after I'd run a campaign using modules that my players just did not care about it. Like, you need to adapt to what your players want, and I didn't think to do that with modules when I was first doing it, so I was just running it as it says, and yeah, that was a mistake.
Yeah, I think there's often so when I first started GMing, and I had this opinion for many years, I was like, homebrew is king. Homebrew is like the way to go to make your players engage. It's like the one that feels like more reactive to what they do, and you're not like walking down an obvious line that says here is the plot. But the older I've gotten and the more I've prepped and the more I've spoken to other players, it's like I think modules have their place, right? And it is very much for, not everybody has as much free time as I have, and not everybody is as into it as I am, and you just want to play a game and dick around with your friends, and you don't have a lot of time because you've been at work and work has sucked. Yeah, modules are the way to go, but yeah, key takeaway is react to your players a little more and bring their story into it, even if it's not written in the module, because that's the only way to make it feel as engaging as a homebrew without having to do all the necessary homework if you're homebrewing the whole thing.
Yeah. I'm actually running a module right now that's...
what are you running?
Season of Ghosts.
Okay, I haven't heard of that.
It's a Pathfinder 2nd edition module. My players listen to this podcast, so I probably shouldn't tell you more about it. But if you want to run it, it's great. You should look it up.
So, are you running it in Pathfinder?
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's the idea is like there's this town, a little village that's in the woods, and they suddenly start getting haunted by ghosts, and they have to figure out why and what they can do to fix it. But it's fun because there's so much detail about this little town. There's like about 200 or 300 people that live there, and
whoa,
about 70 of them have names and some role in the story. So many of the people in the town, like, you get to meet them and have some little interaction with them that's relevant for what's going on with all these different ghost hauntings.
I can easily imagine with a world setting for the story being so wide, like you could run lots of different groups through there and just talk to different people. That's wild.
Yeah, yeah. But because you're trying to like tell the players, make someone that fits within this town, and then it has this player document that's like got 30 pages about the different people that live in the town. If they want to, they can make a character that's really integrated, and it just works really well.
Is Pathfinder your like group's system of choice, or do you guys like rotate around a lot?
I'd say we rotate around a lot. Typically, we'll run a campaign in one system and then move on to a different system. It just depends on the length of that campaign, right? So we did 4th edition for like 4 years because that's how long that campaign took to run. And this Pathfinder one we've been doing for about a year now, I think, close to it. And we're just about finished with the first of the Season of Ghost Adventures, and it's a 4-adventure campaign. So we're probably going to be doing it for 4 years.
I think the longest game we had was probably Masks and the Nyarlathotep, right? That was like 3 years.
That's enormous. That's a really big one. Yeah.
My husband is right next to me, and he was also in that game. So yeah, it's genuinely a really good game. Like if you're trying to get into Cthulhu and you want a game that feels really well fleshed out and stories that are really good and things you can break into like bite-sized pieces, because of the structure of the Nyarlathotep, it's set in different countries, and that's each different chapters and different stories that kind of lead into the whole. It's really good for that. Like it was such a blast going through it. Our keeper was actually running it with another group at the same time, had started before us, and I don't think they finished. So yeah, it was a wild ride listening to what we had done versus what they had done. Yeah, it was a bit of fun, but yeah, I think that's the longest like home campaign I've ever been in, was like that 3-year campaign. Like other than that, like we've done maybe a year, maybe 2 years at most.
Yeah, I have heard really good things about that one.
Yeah, highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. It is good.
One of my players has wanted to run it, so I've sort of stayed away from learning too much about it. But I've at least heard it's very good.
It's so if I understand it correctly, you can run it in either straight Call of Cthulhu 7e, or you can run it as like Pulp Cthulhu, which is ended up what our group ended up doing, because we're a little bit more action based than we are investigation based. Cthulhu, great for investigation, terrible if your players are really bad at it. So the fact that Master Nyarlathotep allow you to have a pulp version as well, just put the stats side by side and different opportunities and ideas, very, very good. That's what he had to revert to for us because we suck.
Oh, that's fun. I think we'd probably go without the pulp one, just for like trying to do something different, because we've done so many like I don't know, like D&D and Pathfinder aren't exactly pulp, but they're so action oriented that this would be to do something different.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend like some of the smaller adventures to try out that proper investigation style. There is the Lightless Beacon is a fantastic starter one, just because it's really well known. There's a lot of resources out there already for it, and it is a fairly short and like self-contained story. You can do it over in 1, 2, or 3 settings. And the Miskatonic Repository, which is their kind of equivalent of Drive-Thru RPG, which is just for Call of Cthulhu stuff. There are so many good like unofficial like fan releases that even the guys at Chaosium are just like, play these. These are amazing. Which cool. I don't see Wizards doing quite as much, but Chaosium are right up there in like, hey, play this fan created thing. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's really nice. Maybe that's why Wizards is doing better than Chaosium, because they're not encouraging people to buy other products.
So I remember this one thing that came out from, it was a tweet that came from one of the head ups at Chaosium, and he had gone to Japan, and in Japan they hadn't really released much, but there were these rows and rows of Call of Cthulhu things that had been written by people in the country, and he was like, this is amazing. It's not official, but this is amazing.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu was the most popular game in Asian countries. Like, it's popular in China too.
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to like their storytelling is generally kind of a bit bleaker, and it really does follow more like the eldritch horror than like Western culture does. So I think it just naturally fits into the stuff that they're already doing, versus like the, you know, putting on armor and running around as a paladin crap. They have a much different like horror based than we do. So yeah, it was just awesome to see this picture of just rows and rows of this stuff coming from official. And yeah, I mean, maybe they are not, you know, maybe KSM aren't doing quite as well as Wizards because they're just like buy fan-made stuff, or it might just be that it's the particular niche, like horror RPGs. You have to have the right group to make that run properly, especially if you want it to not be campy and fun. If you actually want that horror aspect, you need a group that buys into it, and Cthulhu kind of needs your group to buy into that, and also be maybe a little bit good at investigating, not just kicking down every door.
Yeah. If a game is harder to run within what the sort of cultural expectations of it are, it becomes harder to get a large player base that, you know, can talk and play the game. That's true.
For sure.
I have always been puzzled by that. Not because of Call of Cthulhu doing well, but just like, you know, Japan has this huge role-playing game culture for video games that focus on the, like, put on armor and go fight monsters, as what those games are about. Like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest are both like that, and that doesn't seem to translate into tabletop games.
Yeah, like you would have thought, like, yeah, considering like the swath of media that is like people becoming overpowered and putting on armor and fighting and fantasy, like they have a huge scene for that too. It is strange that D&D hasn't, like, or Pathfinder even has, like, gone across the same way that Cthulhu has. It is very strange. Yeah.
Not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Cthulhu. That's what your campaign is now for the Sprouting, right?
Yes, it is. Sort of. There'll be big asterisks because you may have picked up I homebrew a lot. So yeah, our story in the Sprouting is a plant-based apocalypse, which is not really at all in Cthulhu's realm, but I was like, why not? We wanted to do Little Shop of Horrors, but kind of a little bit more serious because that's how I run games. So yeah, like I created this entire world which has been already overtaken by eldritch-based plants. This is set a couple of hundred, maybe 100 or so years in the future. The players are surviving and trying to get over whatever hellscape is coming at them next. And we have the Call of Cthulhu rules, but we've had to make adjustments to them because of the style of actual play that we tend to run, which is very character driven. Call of Cthulhu, however, is definitely have spare character sheets when you play Call of Cthulhu because you die a lot. Yeah. In Nyarlathotep, I think I died 3 times and I was resurrected once. So like there were many character sheets for me, at least, when we played Nyarlathotep. But because we want people to be involved in the characters and in the stories, we had to come up with ways that healing was slightly easier, taking damage was slightly more difficult. So yeah, we had to like change some of the rules to make it fit the kind of story that we were telling. But hey, I've seen so many podcasts out there that take D&D and put it in a completely different setting and add completely new rules. I was like, I should be able to do the same with Call of Cthulhu. I love the system. It's a D100 system. As a GM or a keeper, I don't really need to roll anything. I make my players roll it, so when they fail, it's their fault and not mine. So like, hey, it's not I roll to hit you, it's more like you roll to dodge out of my way. So it's a little bit nicer on my end. I can make my players blame themselves for everything they do, which works really well in like the kind of sanity stress mindset that Cthulhu is. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure because it is different from what normal Cthulhu is, and it is very different from most other actual plays which are like fantasy based, that are like either D&D or Pathfinder, which are the big ones in our niche. But Call of Cthulhu, it just has something that is very unique about it. It feels much more brutal. Death is final, which it isn't in a lot of other TTRPGs. And the one thing that really kind of is my pet peeve in a lot of like fantasy games, when you hit a certain level, death doesn't mean anything anymore. So you either have to add rules to make it mean something, or you go with Cthulhu and you're just dead, which is what we have. So they are very worried about dying. They have been very close on some occasions, but have somehow managed to scrape a save, which makes it feel a little bit more, tense. It has a little bit more stakes to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Once you get past like 10th level in D&D and Pathfinder, like
Yeah.
Death is just like a status condition at that point. Like it's removed with like a single spell. So
Yeah.
players stop caring about it. You can kind of stop caring about it as a DM as well. Like you can just kill your players and it's okay.
Yeah, so long as like one of them survive, you're fine. But if they've
Yeah.
done that horrible thing where they've made allies who can heal, like of course their friends are going to come back and find them and then bring them back to life. Like yeah, it doesn't really mean as much when you get to certain levels.
Yeah. I'm curious why you stuck with Call of Cthulhu as opposed to picking like a more pulpy system like Delta Green or Actung.
Yeah, I looked into other systems. I looked into Delta Green. I looked into the pulp rules, and then accidentally kind of made it pulpy anyway, just with some of the rules that we brought in. I looked at things like City of Mist and Blades in the Dark, because I also love the hell out of the Blades in the Dark system. It's very like tag heavy, so like you have an idea for an ability and then you spiral from there. So like there is no set abilities. There's just like, this is kind of roughly what I can do. Can I make this work in this situation? But ultimately I found that looking at some of the other systems is that they became during combat kind of mechanic heavy. So for example, Blades in the Dark, which was like the number one contestant for me because I love that kind of system. But when you're actively playing those, it ends up being you have to make a lot of conversations and make your point about, I think I should be able to do this. You think you should be able to do this. Okay, let's assign mechanics to this. And you spend a lot of time figuring out the mechanics and having a bargain and a discussion versus I am going to shoot him. Can I do it or not? Am I in range, positive or negative? And then it goes. Like it flows like really simple. So although we knew we wouldn't have a lot of combat, that's just not something I enjoy very much. We wanted it to be smooth, something really easy for people to listen to. And ultimately that's kind of where we fell on Cthulhu, is that combat flows very, very quickly. It doesn't matter if you are starting on level 1, I use air quotes because you don't have levels in Cthulhu.
Right.
Like, or whether you're listening at episode 1 or episode 101, combat should be roughly the same length and it should have the same kind of stakes to it because you don't progress quickly in Cthulhu. When you have like your empowerment moment, your level up, your all of your experience coming to a front, and then you get to upgrade some of your skills. It's a maybe if your skill will increase, and it will only ever go up by a maximum of 10 at a time. So it is something that was incredibly brutal and very reflective of what we kind of wanted this game to be. So ultimately, like the ease of listening for when we do combat, the severity of like how brutal the system is when you're actually like facing life or death situations, and kind of your character really will not feel much more powerful from the beginning to the end. And Cthulhu is kind of meant to be a little bit helpless. Like we're not meant to know the unknown. And I think the system does a great job of reflecting that. You can be a seasoned investigator of 20 years and you can still not have a shotgun skill above like 70. Like it kind of reflects that really well. So ultimately we just kind of went on vibes of like, this feels like it's going to suit our story more, which is why we ended up going for it.
Yeah, okay. Makes sense. And I think there's something to be said for familiarity as well. Like, it can be easier to make adjustments to a system that compared to trying to find one that's the perfect fit that you don't.
Yeah, I heard a really good expression the other day, which is if you know the rules back and forth, you know where you can break them without breaking the game.
Yeah.
And knowing a system fairly well, I will never admit to knowing Call of Cthulhu well. I'll never admit to knowing D&D 5e particularly well. I'm just like, I have a good, very strong familiarity with them. I know that there are people at my table who know the rules much better than me. I know that they can tell me those rules, and I know I am happy to break the rules where needed because I have a good a grasp of what the rules are. And yeah, like knowing Call of Cthulhu, I think I'd only been playing Cthulhu for like a year at that point, but I just kind of I liked it. It was really dark, it was really grim, and I knew roughly where I could break the rules. I mean, I probably still haven't gotten it right. And we've been doing recording the sprouting for like two and a bit years at this point. We haven't recorded in a little while, but we've recorded a lot. And you know, it is a system that some of my players who have only done a little bit of role playing before, they much prefer the simplicity of Call of Cthulhu over D&D, for example, because they don't have to learn abilities, they don't have to know about skills up or any of that. It is just like, can I hit it? Am I rolling high or low? Like, does this work? So for them, it worked out really well. And yeah, I was really glad when we started playing that we had picked this after all, because yeah, I had Aethel, who's one of our players, who also had been like really familiar with the system, also knowing roughly where we could bend the rules so he could suggest those to the other players while we were playing, which is very, very handy to have.
I think there's something to be said for not just like your own personal preference for how you're playing, but also like as an actual play, like that meta discussion you have in Blades in the Dark about like what can I do here? How do I mechanically resolve this? That's not necessarily interesting as an audience member compared to just like tell me the story. And yeah, if you can skip that discussion by picking a system that it doesn't have that discussion, that's better.
Yeah. So like generally when like our group have been talking about doing new actual plays and ideas and stories, we tend to go with like what system is going to work for the game and what is going to work for an audience listening. Like, am I going to have to spend hours trying to explain these really finish rules? Because I mean, here's the thing, like some people absolutely love rules. They go into D&D wishing that it was a D&D because they miss the minutiae of like everything having a number and some like spreadsheet that you have to consult. Some people love that kind of gaming. They want it to be more of that Warhammer-esque feel, the tabletop feel of like, this is my miniature versus your miniature and this miniature will crush that one. And it's a more game. But some people really just want to listen to the role-playing aspect with like that kind of danger element of knowing you don't know what the answer is going to be. You don't know whether they're going to make it, unlike a traditional scripted thing. Someone has already decided, but you're listening live if someone is going to make it, and that's the joy of an actual play. But actual plays, it kind of depends on what you're aiming for. If you're aiming to share the story of your table and what you're playing, then I always think there's an audience for whatever it is that you want to make. If you want to tell a story and it be really mechanics heavy because you want to talk about the mechanics and you love the numbers and you love the way that these two things interact and you can make this absolutely min-maxed power monster of a character, there's someone who will go and listen for that. They will love that kind of stuff. But there are other people who may not be as familiar with whatever game you're playing, who find that really dull and boring or really distracting, or they just want to know whether you get hit or not. Are you about to die? Like, that's the thing they care about. So there's that kind of little balance. But if you're also looking to turn this more into, like, for example, we are looking to make this more of a sustainable thing that can support, at least two of us going full time, we have to think about what is the market doing? Like, what are the audience actually listening to? Are they actually listening to actual plays? Yes, they are, which is great. It's not a big market, but we're there somewhere. Most podcasts are nonfiction, and that's a big thing to fight against. People don't really realize that you can still have a radio show on an audio podcast. But we're there. Yeah. We're fighting for a little space. But within that niche, like, okay, how many people are familiar with, for example, Vaesen, or familiar with Symbaroum, or familiar with Blades in the Dark? It's a very small niche. It's a very small piece of the pie that we're cutting even smaller. So if you technically want to be amongst the big uns, then you want to do something which is one of the big systems. It's Call of Cthulhu, it's Pathfinder, or it's D&D. Like, those are the things that you want to go for if you're trying to be a successful podcast. But if your success is more based in, like, I just want to tell a very good story using a system that really works for it in a style that we like and at our table, then you have to accept that maybe you won't be as big if you pick a kind of more of an indie system. You just may not be as big as some others. However, there are podcasts that are absolutely the exception to the rule. Podcasts that do systems that aren't one of the big three, who are very good, who absolutely thrive in rotating like systems instead of just being like one system for a long form campaign, just lots of short ones. Those do incredibly well, but they do require a lot of work to get to that point. Arguably a little bit more work than if you were doing D&D, Pathfinder, or Call of Cthulhu, but they are still big. It just depends on what work you want to put in the back end. And we know that we're willing now to do a lot of work, but we also know that we kind of maybe want to feed our editor. So maybe we should pick systems that people are a little bit more familiar with.
Yeah. So all those different considerations that go into actual plays, it's a lot.
It is a lot, and that was something that we really had to sit down and think about when we picked the system for the sprouting, for example. And mostly my players were just like, whatever you want to do, V, whatever you want to do, Hem, we trust you. I'm like, well, yeah. I guess I'll figure out all of this. And I was very blessed in that department. But yeah, if you're trying to make something big and you want it to be your hobby, then there's so many things to consider.
Yeah. Well, so do you usually, for your actual plays, you're with the same group that you've been playing with for a while?
Mostly. So the first ever actual play I was a part of, I found through a Reddit post, and me and 3 other guys who were the players, we were playing on this podcast for a while. It was a D&D thing. This is about 10 years ago at this point. And that very quickly fell apart. I then said, I have a stupid idea. I lied and said, I have a story. 2 of the other guys who were the players, they came and joined me. The other guy was a bit flaky, so we asked him to leave because we wanted to take this seriously. We got another player in, and after about 2 or 3 years, we had a 4th player finally join us on a more permanent basis, and I've been playing with that group for nigh on 10 years at this point. And it's the same campaign. This is the Lucky Die. This is our D&D actual play. We've played together for like 10 years now. Not just the Lucky Die, but some other side games that we play as well, like all within that kind of world. Also various streamings we've done together. Like, we've been a very tight-knit group. The Sprouting, however, the player that came to join us is a part of that. One of the original guys, who is also the editor, came to join us on the Sprouting, and also a friend that we have known for many, many years who isn't massively experienced in role-playing games. They've done a little bit here and there, but they have been so involved in like creating art pieces for the Lucky Die and championing what we do and listening to our stories, and was one of those voices way back when we were planning the Sprouting who went, I think we should do a Little Shop of Horrors actual play. I'm like, oh no. So it's the Sprouting is a mixture of people that I've played with for 10 years, 8 years, and really their first proper role-playing experience. They've done others, but not to the extent that we do in the Sprouting. And yeah, I've known these guys for a very long time. Our future actual play, one that we're kind of recording next month in person, and I haven't quite finished the story yet. Shh, don't tell anyone. The guy that I've known for 10 years, our editor, is coming over from the States to play. My partner is playing. He's been a player in our series for like 6-7 years at this point. And a friend of ours who I've known probably for about 6 years now, he's done a little bit of role playing with us on the podcast, but I've been role playing with him for about 6 years. But this is the first time he's been like a really long form campaign that's recorded, and we're very nervous, but we hope he's going to do great.
Cool. Yeah, it's great to have just a group of friends that you play with for that long, let alone being able to do actual plays and that kind of stuff, and have it continue to work for coordination and all those other stuff that go along with that. Yeah,
logistics is a nightmare, especially for us because we're all in different time zones. So when we record the Sprouting, for example, we have a player based out in Germany. There are 2 of us based here in Iceland, and we have a player based out in Texas. We also occasionally have had a couple of guests on, one also based in Iceland, but another is based out in Sweden. So like our time zones just get further and further apart, and it can be incredibly difficult to record, especially our TLD group, our D&D group. We are 2 based in New York, 2 based in Iceland, and 1 based in Texas. But our 2 New York friends work different time. They work different days. One of them works Wednesday through Sunday, and the other one Monday through Friday. And by the time you factor in time zones, and by the time they get home from work, which may be like 5 p.m. New York time, it's either 9, 10, or 11 here in Iceland. Which is just not a feasible time to start recording. So sacrifices are made all round when we decide we have to record the Lucky Die. Not so much when we do the sprouting, because our Texas player has a very, very flexible time frame. So when we decide to record at like 8 p.m. European time, it's kind of like middle of the day-ish for him, but he doesn't work until night. So like he can make that work, but it's not necessarily something we can make work with the rest of our Americans.
Gotcha. Yeah. I was going to say you should get someone in Australia next and, complete your going around the globe.
So when I was looking at other Call of Cthulhu podcasts, like I try my best at the end of every episode we have of anything that we do, be it fiction or nonfiction, to make sure that we have a podcast to do an ad swap with, for obvious reasons of we want to be heard. So swaps are a great way to do that. But also because I want people to hear other shows like Rising Boat and all that good jazz.
Right.
And I came across this podcast called The Fumbled Anthology, and they do a lot of Call of Cthulhu modules. So they're very kind of like, somewhere between like 3 to like 8 episodes on a single story, because they're playing through a module. And I reached out to them like, hey, do you want to do an ad swap? And they were like, no. I was like, oh, well, if you can think of anything else, I'd love to like talk about you guys. And I'm like, how about you come be a player? I'm like, you guys are 12 hours in the wrong direction. Oh, no. So, but I recorded them. I got up really early in the morning. They got up late at night. They stayed up late at night. And yeah, we recorded like 8 episodes together. It was an absolute blast. I love those guys a lot. Like their GM is really good. The group that we ran through, it was all femme or non-binary. And it was such a hoot to play. And very, very... one of my most, if I tell people to go listen to a Call of Cthulhu podcast, I'm like, go listen to them, because they actually play Call of Cthulhu. We play some modded hell compared to what they play as an experience. So,
oh, cool. Yeah, maybe I'll have to check them out once I get closer to doing my campaign for that.
Yeah, I highly recommend. Like they break all their stories down, like so they're titled appropriately, like this story part 1, and they're really good at like telling you who the authors are. So if it's from Chaosium, they'll say it's from Chaosium, or if it's from the Miskatonic Repository, they'll tell you who wrote it. So they're really easy to find if you want to run the games yourself.
Yeah, that's good crediting that way. Then yeah, it becomes more like research for your own campaign. That's cool.
Yeah, very much. And Liam, who's the guy that was GMing the story that I was in, they have 2 GMs, I think. He was really good at like following the story, but also bringing our own, like when we were talking before about modules where you need to bring your player characters into the module. He was incredibly good at that, but without destroying the module that was there.
Oh, cool. Yeah, doing ad swaps is something that's been on my like to-do list for a long time, and I should start doing it.
It's difficult. It can also be really heartbreaking. So every couple of months I will sit down and I will be like, all right, let's try and figure out ad swaps. I have a huge like spreadsheet of all the episodes that are coming out, when they're expected to come out, and all this kind of good jazz, and whether I've got an ad for it or not. And this time round, when I started sending out feelers for ad swaps, I think I sent 150 emails and I did not get 150 returned.
Yeah.
It was shockingly... This time round, shockingly good what a percentage of people replied, but it still wasn't a lot. But I had enough at least to follow up all of the ads we have for episodes this year, which is nice. I've never been in that position before. We've been so far ahead, but it can be heartbreaking, and I don't know how to do it with non-fiction shows. So we have a non-fiction show. The rest of our stuff is either an actual play or it's a scripted audio drama. I don't know how to market non-fiction shows, and I don't know how to do ad swaps with them properly. I don't know who to talk to.
I mean, maybe like horror movie review ones for Call of Cthulhu. There's some overlap there, but yeah.
So there is this great website that I've been using called audiofiction.co.uk. and in there you can search by category, and you can specifically say you're looking for an actual play. And in the actual play, it has broken down the genres instead of by genre, like this is a horror, this is like lit fit, this is like this, out, the other, sci-fi. It actually breaks it down by system instead.
Ooh,
so they have massive list of Call of Cthulhu podcasts in there, and you can click on the name of the podcast and it will tell you when the last episode was released, and it will give you like, this is the name of it. If the people know about audiofiction.co.uk, they can add their own contact details, but generally you can use it as a jumping off point to find the podcast, see whether it's active or not, and then from there do a little bit of Google foo and get like emails and like links to various stuff. So for fiction stuff, that has been the saving grace this time around, because I found so many systems I didn't know existed before, and so many podcasts I didn't know existed before. I found podcasts that had released their first 4 episodes like that month, and it was like, my god, I'm like on the ground floor of finding these things. So yeah, cool. It was a good way to find audio fiction stuff, but again, the non-fiction version, oof. I mean, luckily we only have one non-fiction show, so like that's not too bad for me. We only release that once a month, but it's definitely a lot harder to find folks to do swaps with on that.
Yeah. Yes, I have experienced some, not for finding ad swaps, because I'm not doing that, but for trying to find people to interview, and thankfully you messaged me first, and that made this easier. But yeah, when I'm messaging people, yeah, their response rate is like a third or something like that for me.
Yeah, and I honestly don't even know how I found you. I think I just did the so I have a couple of strategies for finding various things, and one of them is insert genre plus newsletter or plus podcast plus interview into Google, and then you'll get like a load of recommendations, and some pan out, for example, like this, and some just give you nonsense replies, and you're like, fine, I'm not evening with this. But yeah, I've, over the many years that I've been doing this, I've found weird little strategies to find podcasts I'd never heard of before. And the worst that will happen when you send an email or you send a direct message or fill out a form is that you just get no replies. So I am always pleasantly shocked when someone replies like you to one of like the forms, because you don't know whether the form is dead or not.
Yeah,
There's so many forms I've filled out that just have no response. So I'm always pleasantly surprised, for example, when you dropped into the email like, hey, I'd love to do one. I'm like, oh my God, it's working.
Yeah, it looks like we're both in the Black Flare Discord server as well. I interviewed them a while back.
Yeah,
they're another good one for Call of Cthulhu stuff.
Yeah, I think they do a lot of like Delta, don't they?
Yeah, no, that's right. They are doing Delta Green. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. I liked working with them, and they just did a Kickstarter as well, which is like, I think went really well from them, or crowdfunding. So yeah, they did this keychain which does a lot of like the dice formulas on it. So yeah, they were like, hey, could we send you this if you were happy to talk about it? I'm like, if you send it to Iceland, I'm gonna get taxed up the wazoo, so I'd rather you didn't. It's one thing that I definitely struggle with here. Like, I've done a couple of audiobooks, and the artists, the writers, like wanted to send me copies of the book, and I'm like, I'd love to have a physical copy of this book. Like, I loved reading it and I think it was amazing. I'd love to have it on my shelf to point at and go, I did the audiobook for that. However, I get taxed so much when anything arrives in the country. So if anyone wants to send like us like stuff for the podcast, like people have sent us pictures and like metal dice that they have created for us, we just get taxed so hard, and it's just much easier to say, please don't send me stuff. I'm so sorry.
Oh, wow. I didn't think this is the value added tax.
Yeah. So
I didn't
we
think
get
that would apply
on
to small things like that.
You would think so. Like, we're also supposed to be able to have like a specific like value of stuff that comes into the country. We're supposed to have like a certain amount which goes towards gifts. However, when my dad used to send stuff from the UK to me, he could write the words gift, he could write the word happy birthday on the front of the thing, he could even write it in Icelandic, and we'd still get taxed.
Wow.
You have to fight it really hard to get it without the tax on it, especially if it is a gift. But then they usually charge you like a holding fee for having investigated it anyway. You're like, well, why?
Yeah. I remember my get around was to declare the value as $1. So yeah, tax that, whatever. That's fraud, so maybe we shouldn't do that consistently.
Our legal department just said we're not allowed to say that. Yeah, the legal department says don't listen to this.
That's fine. Don't.
So we've had like mics and stuff sent from our editor, like various bits and pieces to like make sure we have the gear that we actually need to produce it the quality that we want. And yeah, he'll take it out of the box, he'll put it in a different box to make it like it's been used, and he's just returning it. Nope, still get taxed, which is fair because it was new. But like, damn it.
Man, that is frustrating. I'm sorry you have to deal with that.
Yeah, it's a little annoying, but sometimes when our editor comes over, he'll bring stuff from the PO box, which is nice, but like he shouldn't have to do that. But alas.
Yes. Let's see. Let's actually start talking about your campaign. We've been going all over other things. So the sprouting is about apocalypse within Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Which I thought was somewhat strange, because usually Call of Cthulhu is about investigating and trying to sort of stop or delay the apocalypse, but this is after it's occurred.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk about that?
Pretty much. So we did this thing on our Discord for a while where we watched movies with our patrons, and basically anyone who hung out in Discord, because we were like, well, you're basically family, so just come watch. And we watched Little Shop of Horrors, and two of the players who were in that campaign were watching it with us, and they were like, this would make an amazing actual play setting, like everything that happens at the end. I'm like, damn, I think I have a story, I think I have an idea. So it took me well over a year to actually put pencil to, or keyboard to Google document, and actually write down a story. And after a while, it was like, okay, so this may be set in an apocalypse, which has already happened. The apocalypse has come and gone. Like, a bunch of people are already dead. Like, this is set 80 years after the apocalypse came. Like, this is now just a setting. Like, yeah, it's an apocalypse, but it's a setting. And they are, the three main characters, three players, are investigating what looks like to be the next step in the phase, in the plan of destroying the world. Of like, there is something that they have been wandering around, avoiding all the eldritch horrors that exist in the plants around them and just exist as like horrible beings in existence. And heading out, meeting up with one another, they discover that there is something weirder happening where as they are dealing with someone who just dies, everything around them slowly begins to turn to crystal, and it gets faster and faster, and have to run away from that. And through that, they get to go to another place and learn that this is part of a bigger plot that is happening, and that the cultists are still very, very active, and they have to go find these people and figure out exactly what is going on. And through investigating various burrows or shelters, whatever you want to call them, they find that this has been happening for a while, that other people are kind of also trying to fight it and piecing together exactly what is coming, where these people are located, what these creatures may or may not do, and going to different towns and learning that each of these places have their own weird little story that may or may not tie into the larger one. Kind of like working through the issues that they have themselves and realizing that not all of the bad things in their life just happens because it's bad. It happens because it's happening as part of like this larger thing that is going on in the world that will eventually, actually we're nowhere near, so we've recorded like 100+ episodes. We're only releasing episode 20 something, so we are very far down the rabbit hole here. So yeah, like just kind of like discovering and figuring out how to stop and how to make sure that Cthulhu, or in this case we call him Ymel, Ymel doesn't see the plan come to light, where the rest of the phase of destroying the world happens, because apocalypses can happen, and you see most apocalypses, it is just instant and then it's done, that's it, the world is over, or it's supposed to be over. But for us, our apocalypse it's just a long process. If you think about eldritch horrors, they have eternity. They don't care if it takes 80 years or 8 seconds. It's about the same to them. So we've just made our apocalypse phases last a lot longer. So yeah, like, it's not as traditionally Cthulhu investigative as a traditional set in modern world, or back in the 20s, 30s or 40s, whatever you wish to choose.
Right.
It's not quite that level of investigation, but I also know from experience not all of my players are great at investigation games. So it is there. It is a big part of what they do, but it is not the only aspect of what they do.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And it's still like there's a malevolent threat that's like coming, and they have to do something about it.
Yeah, we've very much like kept that aspect of like what you typically find in a lot of Cthulhu stuff, along with the best strategy for surviving it is to not be here. But you have an investment in the world, so maybe you should fight it, even if it will kill you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Let's walk through like what happened to the world. So this is Earth, basically, where 100 years in the future, after some plant monster comes along and does something. So what was that event like?
So our timeline diverts in the 1800s. So we actually recorded a bunch of prequel games before we ever hit record on the main campaign. And they were set anything from the 1800s to the mid-1900s to the turn of the millennia. And they all tell slightly different parts of the story of how we got to the apocalypse. So essentially in the 1800s, there was a ritual cast, and in their timeline, that brought through an eldritch horror who started affecting the world, who started like realizing that maybe they may or may not be good in this world, sort of like to the 1900s, where like they started actually discovering this cult, and this thing had gotten much, much bigger, and that something really big and dangerous is actually coming, until 2020, when the apocalypse actually happened. And during the apocalypse, the plants broke through the earth in various different places, focusing on things like power plants to kind of destabilize what is going on around us, to destroying people who have a lot of power, be it politically or magically inclined, to wiping out as much of the population as they can, at least in that initial surge where things are falling apart around people, where you get cut off from, the essentials of life, where people just have to figure out, hang on a minute, my car doesn't work because the power to supply your car is kind of gone. All of the fuel has been drained. The roads have been broken up by these new plants that have broken through the surface of the earth.
Right.
Those plants and those forests that have been around for, millennia have now started walking and started attacking people. That initial surge of the plants taking over absolutely wrecked a lot of the infrastructure that we know and killed a lot of people. And then our actual campaign takes place in 2100, where we basically come across our three survivors, shall we call them? One of them being from a little human settlement, who seem to be trying to do good, who seem to be trying to protect people, but he discovers that not all is as it seems, and due to some political maneuverings on his own behalf and some drama, family-related drama, leaves. And we find him wandering the kind of the cradle, which is where we have what we've called the area, as he's out there exploring the world and trying to make it a better place for the future, because he realizes that's how you have to do it. You have to figure out how to survive in the world as it is. We also come across someone who, for all intents and purposes, is a wild child. They grew up in the forests and grew up in all of the haunted places, barely being raised by an adult at all. And we find them in their late teens as they have been exploring the magical side of them, as they are trying to figure out why plants, a specific kind of eldritch plant, keeps following them, as they are trying to figure out the magic that is going on around them and why their dreams are so strange, so weird. We also come across another guy who spent almost the entirety of his existence in one of these protected bunkers, where he hasn't really had to leave. He's been on his own for a long time. He has been reliant on the technology that has been saved in the burrow that he lives in. And he tries to do good. He tries to preserve everything that was of the old world, but there is an event that forces him to go out, to explore the world, to meet up with the guy who may have left a certain place for political means, to kind of like follow that thread and certain things that happen when they first meet, the crystallizing of everything around them. That ticks off something that he knows he has to follow through to the end, because it is something that is important to him. So that's kind of where our guys start, and they come across another character, a player character, who has more information, who's more in line with like what this item and these relics are, and he basically leads them to the next place where they can learn from a coven of witches, but he unfortunately gets killed. So our fourth player is no longer our fourth player. He was only with us for a couple of episodes, but boy howdy did he kick off some events. So yeah, that's kind of, I think, roughly where we are in the story. Where we have recorded is so far beyond, I struggle to remember what is actually out and what isn't.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, my first thought there was that, like, Little Shop of Horrors is more, like, sneaky for what Audrey 2 is doing, where the plant recognizes that it can't really do things like just be completely aggressive yet until there's more copies of it. So it sounds like in the sprouting, the plants waited for, like, 200 years almost until they did have enough of them around that they could just be aggressive and destroy everything.
Yeah, hitting like that critical mass moment of like there is enough energy, there is enough like of them. I can't reveal too much on what the kickoff and why it kicked off, when and how it did, because that is a prequel game that we are going to play, and one of my players is sitting right next to me.
Oh, okay. Hi, husband.
Yep. We both have secrets that people who may or may not be listening cannot hear.
All right.
Yeah, like we kind of decided to set this when we were talking about the setting. Is there are, I think, 2 different endings for Little Shop Horrors, and we watched the ending where the Audreys take over the world and demolish everything. So that's where we decided, because I think that was the version that we watched. So we were like, well, what if all the plants had taken over? What does that look like? This would be an amazing setting. I'm like, oh, you're right.
The other version isn't the official one. I think that was just an alternate cut they did for one of the movies.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yes, they're supposed to take over. That's correct.
Yeah, we just decided it would have to be in that kind of a world for it to have like stakes. For example, like we didn't want a lot of people around. We wanted everything to potentially be a threat, because that is Cthulhu. If you come across an eldritch horror, you should run. There is no real way of fighting it. And even if you do fight and win, you usually end up dead or insane. We actually did a Delta Green game last night where my character did destroy 2 eldritch beings, but I died in the process. I had 2 grenades, and I made sure that when I was in the beast of that thing, I blew it apart. So yeah, death was assured.
Yep, that definitely sounds like Cthulhu to me.
Yeah, pretty much.
So from your description, it sounds like this is a bunch of different types of plants. So like in Little Shop of Horrors, it's like specifically like the Audrey 2 plant variety, but this is more like all plants are evil. Or whatever you want to.
Yeah, kind of potentially all plants. Before we started playing, I was like, here's an open AMA. You can ask me anything you want about the world, and I will fill it out, or I will tell you that, I can't tell you, spoiler reasons. And one of them was like, well, if all the plants are infected, how do we know what we can eat? How do we survive? I was like, well, not all plants are infected, right? Because that would just be a step too far. Like, there is no good storytelling. The plants would have automatically have won. We rely on plants to eat, and animals eat those, and we would inevitably end up killing ourselves. So not all plants can be infected. So one of the things we had was like, okay, so have you seen this plant before? Is it the colors you expect it to be? Is it singing a song at you? Is it offering you like a deal with the devil? Have you eaten this plant before? So we just kind of did those things. So yeah, we have like a lot of different varieties of plant, often with their own unique hazards. So we have a silver birch tree, which we call the Hollow's Crest, which is kind of an ambush predator, even though it's a tree. A lot of the world and a lot of the buildings have fallen apart, so it's kind of easy for it to do that. Mm-hmm. But its telltale is that as it moves, it will rattle, and as it rattles, that's actually its communication with other Hollow's crest to kind of like ambush or push someone into an ambush to spring that. And this creature does kind of the thing where its branches at the top will just open up and just eat you. It will just bend down and like crush you and destroy you, and that's how it gets its nutrients. We have another plant which is called a red creep. It is if you know anything about War of the Worlds, there is something called red creep, and that is apparently supposed to be the plant that covers Mars, brought here by the Martians. But in our world, it kind of looks like that. It is long red vines covered in like tiny little spines, and if that touches you, it will eventually wrap itself around you, paralyze you, and then consume you that way. It can be removed, but it's an exceptionally painful process, which some of our characters have seen in action or have seen people die to this. So we have that as like an example plant. We also have a plant called violet, which is exactly what you expect. It's just a violet plant. It just moves around, it skitters around, but you can make a deal with it. So very much like the D&D traditional, like Genie's Wish, or if you're looking at Blades in the Dark, it is essentially a devil's bargain. And you can have a conversation with Violet and she can holistically change things in the world, but it never works out well for you. So we have like a big variety of plants, and depending on what I need to tell a specific aspect of the story, depending on what plant I will use or make up if necessary.
Is it difficult to create monsters like that in Call of Cthulhu, or is it more just like whatever fits the story and you don't need stats for it necessarily?
A kind of a mixture of both. It can be really difficult, especially like traveling from A to B, because it should still be dangerous, right? But I don't want to keep reusing the same plants because that becomes kind of boring.
Yeah.
But I will reuse them. Coming up with stat blocks is and always has been my pure weakness. I hate writing stat blocks, especially for stuff I have to create, and I create a lot. But I will use like a base stat block from another creature or another being and then change it or completely write something new. And when it comes to like special abilities or powers, it is often based on what I think the story needs that plant to be. So if it's supposed to be representative of like, walking into something blindly, the plant will probably end up blinding you, or it will end up like, messing with your mind through pheromones or something. And I would be like, okay, so I know there are other similar abilities in the Call of Cthulhu rule set for creatures. I will take that and I will adapt it. I'll either take it word for word, like blind will be blind, and I know, okay, I need to make them roll this specific kind of roll to either avoid it or only take like, a minor version of it. So it can be difficult coming up with like specific stat blocks for specific creatures, but generally speaking, it will always be based on like what I think will be cool, or what kind of monster I think will be good for this particular thing that's happening. Or if I know that I want them to feel helpless and I want to isolate them, then I will give them creatures that make them unconscious, because that's an easy way to isolate people. The people with the highest con will usually end up being able to resist that, but everybody low will probably end up failing it. So like I can effectively isolate them and then take them down from there. So I would do that, but sometimes I would just off the cuff invent creatures because I'm bored. The players look like they're about to be bored and it doesn't feel dangerous enough, so I would just invent a creature off the fly, and they don't have a stat block until they fight it, but then you can always describe it, especially in Call of Cthulhu, as it's not, you can't interact with it that way. Like you can't fight it. It has a stat block of like 150 plus, whereas normally it'd be 100 because it's a percentage system.
Right.
Like it is impossible to resist this. If you're in the aura, you are slowly going to lose your ability to hear and only hear like something whistling at you. When you look at this creature, your vision will become double and blurry. Like it just is an effect of what this creature does. I use those you can't save or you can't roll against very sparingly, but it is something that I can do. But my players are very good at picking up this thing may be more powerful than us, so we're going to leave. Their characters are meant to have lived in this world for anywhere between late teens right up to late 50s. Yeah, late 50s. So like they would know that engaging every fight is not the option. So they'll be pretty good at running away from things that are creepy. But because we record this, I know that if I invent a creature off the cuff while we're playing, I will have to write their stat block down afterwards, because people will inevitably want to know what this creature is, and I have been stung by this before, of making a creature up on the fly, not having any stats written down, and then people asking, like, that sounds really cool, what are the stats? I'm like, I don't know, buddy. I did this a lot in our early years of Dungeons and Dragons, and boy, when I'm looking back at it and thinking about, oh, we could maybe turn this into a setting, so much regret has come through. I hate former me. Past me can absolutely eat it, because, like, I don't know what the stat block for this creature was. I don't know what the stat block for this green sword that this character had in episode 1. I don't know.
Yeah, that's something I do in my home campaign, where I'll just make something up, and sometimes it doesn't need a big stat block, just enough. But then I don't have fans that are asking me how this works in my home campaign.
God, I miss sometimes that, like, relief of, like, doing things in a home game, because you can get away with so much more.
Right.
You can just be like, I don't remember that happening. Or if someone does remember something happening, you're like, yeah, that's what I always intended. Because, you know, people forget between, like, session and session when you're at home. Like, oh yeah, it was a +2, but now it's a +3 sword, and no one will ever 100% remember. But unfortunately, when you record an actual play, people hear you say a +3 sword, and you're like, son of a... Well, I guess it has to be a +3 sword then.
Well, fans will, like, re-listen to episodes too, so sometimes they know your stuff better than you do.
Yeah, we have had that a lot with the Lucky Die, because I think at this point we had our 8th anniversary last September. And by the time we finish releasing episodes for the campaign that we have just finished, they get the last episode when we're almost 10 years out. And we started recording this 10.5 years ago by the time that last episode comes out. And we constantly get questions from episodes that came out like 6 or 7 years ago. I'm like, hey V, what exactly was happening here? Oh, I love this idea. Can you tell me where this person came from? I'm like, I'm sorry, what with who now? And that happens a lot. They just, like, they'll ask cast questions like, hey, why did Sultana do this thing here? Or like, oh my god, what's the story behind Sultana's, like, connection with this character? And everyone's like, I don't know. I'm sorry. I have no memory.
It's been so long.
Yeah, especially for me, because I was recording at that point when I was working from home, when I was back in the UK. I didn't have a 9 to 5. I had a whatever I wanted to do, self-employed. So I could happily record at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the morning, which is what I used to do. So the Americans could record on a decent schedule. So, like, when someone's like, hey, 8 years ago at 2 in the morning on, like, February 3rd, what were you thinking? I'm like, I have no idea, brother. There's nothing going on up here. I'm going to have to re-listen to the episode. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm probably not going to do that.
Yeah. Unique problems.
Yeah, unique actual play problems of, like, what do you do? Like, I know, for example, that one of the people who actually appear on the Lucky Die and also in the Sprouting in about 100 episodes from now, they've probably listened to the Lucky Die. They've told me, like, they're on their 4th listen through. I'm like, wow. But why? It's not finished. I don't understand. It just becomes a comfort thing. Like, if you really get into the story and the voices, and, you know, we have a unique thing in actual plays compared to, like, you know, scripted fictions, for example, is that you're not just listening to the characters tell a story, you're listening to the players also reacting to the story and having to deal with the fact that their character may be in mortal danger, or some big drama thing has dropped, or, like, you know, they're reeling with the plot twist that I have just dropped upon them. Like, we have 2 layers of storytelling that people interact with, so we have a very unique thing there, and I think that's one of the strengths of an actual play versus, like, scripted. Scripted, however, has the joys of knowing where the plot is going and knowing that your plots, your themes are going to play out. You have no such guarantees in an actual play, which is infuriating but also very exhilarating. But yeah, like, we have people on, like, their 4th or their 5th listen through, and I'm just like, I don't understand how you can listen to me that much. I wrote it, I prepped for it, I played it, and I QC quality controlled it at least once. I don't understand why you would listen to me again.
Well, I don't know, you're doing something right if that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, we've finished recording the Lucky Die. Like, that story's done, at least that campaign in that world is done. And I'm very proud of what we've done. I'm really proud of how the characters' stories played out. I like the themes that the characters ended up like portraying. And if you think about it from analytical things, like this really cool thing and that led to that cool thing, and that was really good character growth. And you know, the other part of me is like, we're just playing a D&D game. Who the hell listens to this? But I'm very glad that people do, because it means I get to tell stories, you know, almost professionally at this point, which is very, very nice, and allows us to do things like tell the Sprouting. We would never have done that if the Lucky Die hadn't been received so well, and if we didn't have such a good crew at the table and also off the table, because off the table is usually why on the table stories never finish. It's usually life commitments or drama llamas. So
yeah. Well, let's see. I've got a couple different questions about the setting for the campaign. So one of them is about like the physical and magical laws of the universe.
Yeah.
So I feel like Cthulhu usually has, you know, pretty similar physical laws where, like, you know, the gravity works this way, and, you know, the plants need sunlight and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And from that perspective, like, one of my questions was, like, why can you just burn the plants, or, like, try and orchestrate, like, a nuclear fallout situation to starve them of sunlight?
So, yeah, yes. So the plants still have to abide by certain like physical laws. They still have to abide by the fact that they need nutrients and that they need sunlight. So they still require those things. Now, granted, there are always going to be some plants that don't require sunlight. Like, you know, there are still going to be things like mushrooms and, you know, things like that that don't necessarily require the same as everything else, but they're usually the exception to the rule. So even if, for example, you were about to go out with furnish every human being, old and young, with a flamethrower and tell them to burn the forest to the ground, there would still be some eldritch plants left. Those hidden deep in caves, those hidden like within drawers, those who have infested humans, for example. Like there will still be some remnants of them left behind. You definitely could orchestrate a nuclear apocalypse and just be like, you know what? Let's just bomb the hell out of this part, but you would have to basically launch pretty much every ICBM and cover as much as the planet as possible to be able to wipe them out. But we'd also wipe ourselves out, which would not be an ideal solution.
And it sounds like you're sort of at the point where that's no longer a choice that's available, even if it might be better for humanity than the current situation.
Yeah, very, very much so. Like those who are, for example, who have the knowledge on how to build and or launch nuclear stuff, they are very few and far between. Like imagine 80 years from now and you haven't had good like STEM schooling. Your schooling mostly rolls around like handling weapons, learning how to, pick the plants that will not kill you and which ones to grow, and how to scavenge from the old world. Like learning how physics work and learning what decay rates are and learning what EM fields are. Like those are not things that are traditionally taught because they aren't necessary for survival right now. And to get back to that state, humans would have to grow in number so that you can have the luxury time of being able to learn those things again. Right. Now, there are some people in our world who do have advanced like STEM learning, who do have a lot of like scientific minds to them, but they are the protected ones. Like they are like, oh, these people are super smart and we have the ability to protect and raise and nurture them and feed them and not make them have to go out on scavenger runs or make them become farmers. Like there are some of those in this world, and we have characters that interact with them. But they are so few and far between. Like they are like, this is a smart person. This person does not know how to exist in the actual world. They have to be cocooned and looked after because they don't have the skill set on how to survive in the world.
Really hyper division of labor. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. There's like, at least one of the characters, his brother is one of those guys. He has yet to meet him. So we did prequel stories with all the characters where we just did a little like snapshot from some point in their past, which,
Right.
Obviously to them and to everyone listening, it has something to do with the bigger plot. But like he started like, his thing where like his brother's obviously an incredibly smart and intelligent guy. He's trying to figure out like power related problems. And that's just kind of our look into his world, and that character will come up again. We've met him in recording, but we haven't met him in release yet, because I think this is like at least 2 years out from our release schedule currently when we get to meet the brother again. But like, yeah, he's wandering out in the world. He's an incredibly smart guy, but an absolute liability in the real world.
Oh, sounds like me.
Me too.
Going back to the physical laws question. So from my understanding of the way plants work is plants actually can't move very much because photosynthesis doesn't actually provide that much energy. So they wouldn't normally have enough stored resources without like withering and dying if they're moving to go around and kill humans who are, able to move much faster in most situations. Is that something that you have an answer to within the campaign? Or, I mean, magic is an acceptable answer for a lot of these.
Yeah. Like, so I have a pet peeve of the answer being, it's magic. It's one of my pet peeves, but sometimes the answer is it's magic. But when it comes to like specific plants, again, depending on the plant, because there are always exceptions to the rule. But mostly the plants also need various nutrients that they get from the soil. And for them, when, for example, Hollow's Crest, which eat people, they get a lot of nutrients from eating people. And for them, they'll use their branches and their root system much like we'd use arms and legs. So they're just very efficient-ish at absorbing humans or animals or even other plants if absolutely necessary. And sun is kind of like an additional for what they need.
Right.
But the rest of it comes from their eldritch heritage. It comes from the fact that, some of these plants come straight from the eldritch realm. So they have a lot of like innate magic to them, which allow them to articulate and move and do things that otherwise normal plants would not be able to do. So yeah, it's a little bit of it's magic, and it's a little bit of you can starve these creatures out if you know what they need. So if they need nutrients or people or Venus flytrap, they need flies. If you starve them out and get rid of the sun, they will probably wither and die, but it may take a lot longer than for an average plant.
Yeah. And from my understanding of Call of Cthulhu, like the magic part of it is ill-defined. Like it's meant to be sort of that you can't understand it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. So a lot of spells that are cast in Cthulhu also come with accompanying sanity damage. And we do have that system as well. So we still have like, hey, if you see a plant that you've never seen before and it does something that is completely unexpected, like it starts whispering your name at you and following you and destroying any inorganic thing that it comes across, like, cars or tires or like material, and it just rips those apart in front of your face as it makes like a mock version of you that follows you around. Yeah, that's going to be some sanity damage. You're not used to that. A plant, however, that whispers at you and says, hey, feed me, you're probably going to ignore that. That will probably be part of your everyday. But generally speaking, yeah, anything that is like out of the ordinary for them would be a sanity damage, because that is magic beyond known. Anyone who casts a spell, for example, will also incur sanity damage, not only to the caster, but if this is an effect that other people can see or if it's being cast upon them, they will also probably end up suffering sanity damage. Gotcha.
Okay. So you mentioned like plants that imitate people or infest people.
Yeah.
My other sort of cultural touchstone for like plants are taking over the world, besides Little Shop of Horrors, is Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yep.
Is that something you brought in for this in some way?
Sort of, in a way. So we haven't had any direct doppelgangers yet. Yeah, cover your ears. We haven't had any direct doppelgangers yet, but we have come across people in recording, not release, who have essentially been taken over by plants. They either have a parasite or it has completely replaced their nervous system, and the body and the skeleton around them has fallen apart. So essentially what you're seeing is a plant, which is the nervous system as a person moving around, which is heavily inspired by Gemini home video. I saw it as one of like their videos that they did of like, yeah, this kind of nervous system, which is just the only thing that survives of a person. I thought, that is terrifying. I hate that. A plant is going to do that to people. And in our world, they're called the bracken. And there's a little village of those. And there's one guy who's surviving amongst the bracken because he knows that one of those bracken used to be his sister and he can't leave her. He knows that it's probably not her, but he's not sure. So he stays with them. And they're highly contagious. So he is paranoid to hell, but he can't leave.
That's a sweet story. That's not quite the right word, but
yeah, it's a dangerous game he's playing.
Yeah,
it's a good story of family and dedication, and it's kind of like definitely representative of stuff. Your choice on what you think it is. I know what it is, but yeah, it's definitely representative stuff. But it is a sweet story in its own way, but it is not a logical story. In this world you would have left, because these things are dangerous and they will kill you. But sometimes love trumps that, and you just have to do what's right in the heart.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the physical location. So from what I've read, this takes place in northern Italy, which
yes,
feels like an odd selection, because you're in Iceland and the UK, so that's what I would assume you would have gone for.
Yeah, so I, when I was trying to figure out where to set this, I have definitely learned that horror works really well in a confined area. So if you, for example, if you set it in modern day, in theory, your character can get on a plane and go wherever they want and leave the story behind. Great, that's a very logical thing to do, but it's a terrible storytelling thing. So by bringing in some of those walls and making it smaller, you can contain a lot more of the options. You can make it like easier to contain the story. You make it a lot less far spread. Like the options for your players or your characters are a lot less, especially in this kind of environment where there are no planes, trains, and automobiles. Like you kind of it's horsepower or leg power, and that's it. So I started thinking about like what kind of area I would want to confine the story to. Like, for example, if I set it in the middle of America, you could pretty much go anywhere. Like, there's not a lot of natural barriers that stop you easily going from one side to the other, depending on where you set it. And I was like, well, it can't be there. Also, I don't really know America very well, which is a terrible thing for when my brain eventually ended up. So I started looking around the globe and started looking at the ones that show you mountain ranges. And I started like scanning around. Like, I could set it in the UK. I know it very well, but I don't know, something about it just didn't sit well with me. So I started looking around a bit more, and I found the north of Italy that has the Alp mountain range to it. There's another little mountain range kind of like down the back of it. And I looked at the area and thought, this is contained enough. Like, you have natural barrier of the sea in two different places. You have the mountain range, which almost completely cuts it off from the rest of Europe. And I looked at it, and more I looked at it, and was like, okay, how about we do a Google thing? Like, how far does it take for you? How long does it take you from walk from one side to the other? And it was something like 2 weeks or something. I'm like, that's doable. Like, this is a believable, like, if you have to walk to places, it's not so long that I have to figure out a 3-week voyage, because that's ridiculous. But there are enough, like, small towns here and there, and even big towns that, yeah, it seems reasonable, but some of these would have survived, and it means the journey isn't so long that I have to keep coming up with, things that may not matter if you're traveling, or make, travel non-existent and completely pointless to the story. I was like, yeah, the more I looked, the more I realized, I'm like, okay, well, I know that it's an alternative timeline, so let's make the world a little bit alternative. So I moved some of the mountains to completely encapsulate the north of Italy. I put volcanoes in different places because I thought, okay, it makes sense that if the world has been like chopped up and broken, maybe parts of the tectonic plates have also broken in these areas.
Yeah, sure.
And you often see that around mountain ranges anyway. So, all right, I'm going to stick a volcano here. I'm sticking a great big whacking mountain right in the middle of like the northern part, because you know what? I want that there. That's going to be a pivotal plot point for the future. So I'm going to do that. And I managed to build this little area which was really self-contained. It meant I didn't necessarily have to deal either with the extremes of weather. So, for example, if I set it in Iceland, it's going to be -10°C at some point in certain parts, depending on where we set it. And that's just not an easy storytelling mechanic. It doesn't help lead to the story that we wanted to tell, which is the active part of like trying to deal with this, because you're having to fight the weather so much more. And I didn't really want weather to be a big part of the story. But if you set it in Iceland, the environment and the weather by necessity usually ends up having to be a big part of the story, depending on what time of year you set it. So I was like, let's do north of Italy. Let's just make this work. Let's take these places. What would happen to Milan? Cool. I'm going to build a sinkhole in Milan. Sounds great. There's a place called New Milan right next to it. Beautiful. Lovely. Love it. What happens to Venice? Underwater. Fantastic. Awesome. And the more I looked at the environment and like the things that already exist in northern Italy, the more I sort of like saw things and geographical ideas and like, oh, could that lead to a cool thing that they can discover, or this might lead to a really cool story point. So that's why we ended up setting it in the north of Italy. Also because if we ever do a tour, then we can go to the north of Italy and put it on a business expense.
Ah, excellent. Well, I guess a follow on for like the idea of trying to have a small area that's, you know, relatively small and like boxed in, but still like a nice place to live and able to support like a large community of people living there. Why not like Sicily?
Yep. I didn't want to set it on too small of an area, and I didn't want to set it necessarily on an island. And that's because I knew where some of the starting locations for the sprouting actually happened. And if my players decide to go explore the origins, and I'm speaking a lot around the thing because the players are next to me, I know that there may be an opportunity for them to leave the cradle and go explore some of the original places where this happened, to meet some people who don't come from the cradle itself. And unfortunately, if I set it on an island, it's a lot harder to hide that someone has come from outside of the cradle, because they would have to arrive by boat.
Right. Okay.
So they can trudge through the dangerous mountains and blend seamlessly into the rest of the cradle. A lot harder to do if they're based out on, for example, on an island.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think Italy's also a nice choice just from having some cultural touchstones that I feel like a lot of Western listeners would be familiar with.
Yeah, it is nice being able to reference like geographical features that actually exist, because I kind of, although I love fantasy, I love being able to make up like entire worlds and like ecosystems and figuring out how this town came into existence. You can, for example, like using modules, you can bypass some of that heavy world building thing and just be able to go, oh, we all know it, for example, as this particular place, Milan, for example. We all know it as Milan, but in this world, it's called something different. And it's something that your brain can automatically start like, oh, this is what this is. The same as like, you know, if I came in and start describing like a long metal tube with a wooden handle and there's like a little mechanism like shaped like half a moon. And yeah, like when you pull the half moon, it makes a huge explosion. I can explain that, or I can say it's a shotgun.
Right. Yeah, simplified it.
Yes, even though the characters may not necessarily know that's what it is. For the older characters in the game, they know what a shotgun is, but I've been having a lot of fun with the younger character who kind of grew up in the wilds of not knowing what some of these things are. So describing them has been an absolute joy for us all, of just trying to figure out how to explain this thing when they are the only character seeing it. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, but sometimes, yeah, you just have to shortcut and say, yeah, this is Milan.
Right. I was curious about in the cradle what so people are surviving and kind of hiding from the plants. Is that what they're doing?
Sort of. So like there are lots of like small farms around because people still need to eat. People still need to grow food. Like you can't just survive on game. So yeah, there's like little farms around. There's folks who are hiding in burrows or bunkers or fallout shelters, if you want to call them, that are having to surface now because they're beginning to run out of supplies and food. And there are also there is a group of people called the Collective, and they have set up a bunch of like small outposts, you know, some specializing in like raising young, some of them specializing in like, you know, being political, some like, you know, specifically fishing, especially out on the coast. And these collectives kind of work together to make sure that everybody has enough resources, that everyone has enough food, to make sure that, you know, children who are orphaned because parents have had to go on scavenging missions or whatever, like they are raised and taken care of, that everyone has like a basic level of education, and like their strongholds, their kind of areas that they are just kind of a mixture of sort of things. Some of them are protected only by walls and guards. Some don't really have any real protection. It's just a little farmhouse and they have a shotgun and they just have to hope and pray. Some are protected by electric fences, so that things can't climb in. Everything is concreted over. Anyone sees a dandelion, that thing is dead. So they have like a little group of them, and at least on the surface what they're doing is for the good of all.
Okay, so people are still surviving in small groups, but there isn't like some large government that's overseeing the whole area?
No, there isn't really like big groups of people. Like when we think of like a town, we think like thousands. Like a town here is maybe 10s, 20s or 30s of people. Like it's not a huge amount. However, there is the remnants of the government who have resources and places that are much bigger and much more protected, and they have a lot more resources than those who are trying to live in the cradle proper. They are spread out in various places, and they have their own machinations and their own involvement in the apocalypse that the rest of the cradle is trying to stop and prevent. Whether the government are on the side of good or bad has yet to be determined.
Sounds like the Conclave from Fallout again.
Yeah. I wonder where my love of all things apocalypse comes from.
Well, cool. It's a great group. It's people love it. So.
Yeah. No, it's been a beautiful idea stream, at least for me. Like it kicked off something in my young 20s brains. I love apocalypses. I love nuclear apocalypse. I find a lot of the factions to be very interesting, even if they're not particularly well thought out. Like the ideas are there, which you know is a great kind of like great inspiration, I guess.
Well, one of the things that often comes up in apocalypses, besides secret government organizations, is like raiders and cannibal kind of people as well, like people that are degraded by the apocalypse.
We have some of those. We have some raiders who are very much just out for themselves, right? And they are based at a place called Alteshus. One of my players is German, so I occasionally throw in random German words because it always makes me happy to see them go, oh, I know what this place is. So like there are some raiders. Some are just small one-off, like 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Some are slightly bigger collective of raiders, and yeah, they are very much just in it for themselves. They are very mercenary. They will happily stab you in the back if it does them good, or if they're just like, I'm bored, I'm going to. Our player characters rather, have done their best to avoid raiders at all costs. I don't know why. They've only interacted with a couple of raiders, and the raiders were on our side, so I don't know why they've avoided them quite so hard, but I guess I'm just waiting for them to meet raiders proper. And yeah, we do also have a little cannibal group whose original leader made one of those devil's bargains with Violet, and that kind of affected the rest of the people that they were with, and has continued down into like a couple of generations hence, and lastly they are cannibals.
All right. Yeah, it's a good set of different people.
Yes, I spent a lot of time when I was making this world thinking about like different organizations and groups of people that would just be here, whether they were relevant to the plot or not. I just thought about the different kinds of people who would be here. Like you'd have the loners, you'd have the cult leaders, not like the I'm ending the world cult leaders, but you know, the horrible cult leaders, the ones that kind of exist in real life, like those douchebags, like they would also be here, right? They would still be around. You'd have people who are trying to just do good, who are just trying to make the world a better place. You'd have people who are just out for themselves because they become so like disillusioned with existence. They're just out to kill. You have people who just want to have as close to a normal life as possible. You'd have like, nefarious groups. You'd have schemers. You'd have like, liars and cheats and genuinely small offshoots of people who just want to make the world a better place, who are just trying to fight this apocalypse. So when I was thinking about the world and the people in it, I just sat down and spent a good portion of my time just writing out backstories and lore and places of these people. And some of them exist still and some of them don't. I spent a lot of time thinking about back in the 1800s and the 1900s when our prequel stories are set, like what happened to those people, like what happened to the investigators who found that like mysterious relic from way back when, what about happened to like this private investigating group who figured out like this person was casting magic and had rescued them from a horrible cult who was about to sacrifice them. Those weird little kind of like groups, they have been felt, they have been seen in the rest of the Cradle like 200 years later. Like I love kind of like building all of that in, even if it's not relevant to the plot, because it kind of makes the world feel a bit more real.
Yeah, exactly. It's got something exists outside of what the obvious stuff going on is.
Yeah, and that's also like when you're like planning an investigation game or you're planning anything that has like a mystery to it, especially if it's an ongoing campaign like this and it's going to take, I think, probably a couple more years before we even finish it. Like,
right.
There are things that if you want the investigation to be like logical, you have to sow some of these seeds early. Like if we're doing prequels, some of the seeds you find have to turn up later. And even if they're relevant to the plot or not, like the private investigator that you were a part of and all of that, like, yeah, you just find out that they dissolved like 10 years before the apocalypse because the last surviving member died and nobody believed them. But it also could be like, hey, that evil research facility that we did Crime Scene Cthulhu in, where you had to clean up all the corpses. That company's still going. Like, it's like, yeah, it's just like feeding those in, and it kind of like helps lead into like some of the like meta mystery, like, ooh, what happened to those? But also like it helps in like the investigation part as well, of like, oh, like we figured out that this links to this, so our characters can go over there and like find out this thing in this place, because we know that, for example, company A actually owns like 50 different buildings and one of them still exists and is still being used because a scout over here said that they saw people going in and out, like things like that. It's been a lot of fun to put together, but it's a bit of a headache.
Yeah. Well, along those like sort of weird groups, I was curious if any were more accepting of like the plants in the situation and just kind of going with we have to work with them now instead of trying to hide from them or grab all the flamethrowers and burn them or whatever.
Mostly they tend to be the smaller fringe groups. Plants pretty much will always turn on you, and that's the accepted stance in pretty much all of the Cradle, with one major exception. So to the north of Italy, there are mountains, and a lot of people go skiing up there. Mm-hmm. So there's a place I invented called Corinthus. And these people, way back in their ancestry, one of them made a deal with Violet and managed to coexist with plants. I mean, that's not strictly true. They learned to coexist with a plant, and these are called fire orchids. And the fire orchids live up here in the cold snow. They provide the Corinthians like heat and power. They provide protection for them when other plants try to come up there, despite the cold, slowing a lot of plants down. The fire orchids are defensive because they know that the people of Corinthus will protect them as well. So if an invading plant comes up, Corinthians and the fire orchids will go down and deal with them together. So they just became a little bit dependent on each other. That's really the only place that they've come across that I can mention where they coexist with plant singular rather than plants plural.
Do you mean like all the fire orchids are the same intelligence or like just the same variety?
So they're all the same variety. So the fire orchids, they all operate independently. They move when you're not looking at them, and yeah, they will just essentially keep themselves around Corinthus. But yeah, they don't share an intelligence. They aren't as intelligent as humans. They just act mostly on instinct. But it's much like, for example, if you had a very intelligent dog, that's kind of like the level of the fire orchids.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess circling back to the campaign itself now, you have there was some like crystal thing you were talking about, and cultists are trying to bring about the next evolution of the plant apocalypse.
Yeah, so the kind of big kick-off event after the three characters meet, the three-player characters meet, is they decide that, traveling as a group is always safer than traveling individually. So they travel with an NPC that says, hey, I need a little bit of help and I'm willing to pay you. Can you travel with me? They go they find a burrow which has been only just opened, and they find that the people who have just moved in there have been absolutely slaughtered. They've been killed by a plant and nobody really knows what it was. And there's like two survivors outside. One of them is absolutely fine and the other one is basically about to die. They go in, they see that there is a big scary plant down there, which is more eldritch being than it is truly a plant. And as they race back up to the top, one of them is the NPC that they're traveling with is killed by sniper fire. And the death of this particular NPC basically kicks off a ritual that hadn't been finished, which was supposed to be their death. And they slowly turn to crystal, and everything that they touch turns to crystal, and it ramps up in speed to the point where everybody has to get their shit and run. They were there to retrieve a book, a relic that was at the bottom of this burrow. So all they have left at the end is this book and someone who's been turned into crystal, and a bunch of assassins who are now unfortunately dead. So they follow this book to the next logical place, to a person who may know about these things. The book is removed from their care by eldritch means, and the player who comes in, who ultimately died, basically takes them towards a coven of witches, ultimately also dies in this process on the way there, and also slowly turns into crystal. And that activates a memory in one of the player characters of like, wait a minute, this is not the first time I have seen people and things turn to crystal. And they get to ask him about his past and where he saw this and why he was there when he saw this like really big ritual take place. So yeah, they kind of begin to piece together things, and in release, I believe that they are still trying to hunt down the book and figure out how this backstory that the player had been through, how that relates into what's going on right now. And I believe they're about to beat the answers out of someone in release.
All right. Well, yeah, I guess there's a bit of a limitation of how much we can get into that with your player right there and wanting to save things for release instead of just telling the whole thing.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, so when we first started recording The Sprouting, we recorded every Monday and every Tuesday for about 4 hours each time. So that would net us between 2 and 3 episodes a day. And so at some points we were doing 6 episodes a week. And we did this for nearly 6 months. And then we had the other two who aren't based in Iceland fly over to us, and we recorded between 50 and 60 episodes live. And then we did a couple of episodes when they got home, and we've had to take a break for various life reasons. But it ended up being that we have 120 something episodes recorded, and we only have just about released episode 27, I think, to our patrons. So yeah, a lot has happened to the point of like, I don't remember what happened in the episodes that are coming out, because I am so far mentally ahead of like where we are in release. And I don't think I have ever met another actual player that's been so far ahead as we have. It was insanity to do what we have done, but I am really glad, because there's a lot of continuity that comes with recording frequently and recording a lot. So like, you know, things that happened, you know, 3 episodes ago only happened yesterday for us. It's not like we've taken a week between recording these episodes. So I was really happy with that, especially when they came over and we recorded actually at our table in our little really terrible living room with all of its echo and everything. We did like 50 or 60 episodes over the course of about 8 days, and it was amazing. And I'm really glad we did it. But it does mean that there are so many plot points and characters even that have only been hinted at in release that I know intimately back and forth, because we have done so much with them. But that probably won't come out for years. I'm hoping we get to finish it soon so we can, edit the backlog and just get it like scheduled, and I never have to think about the sprouting again, except to try and remember what I was thinking about 4 years ago at the kitchen table.
Yeah. I do think it's a good idea to record that way, though, because exactly what you said, that it's so much easier for you and the players to know what's going on and have that continuity, because other ones that do like one session a month or every other month to keep within a release schedule, they always have to like, what were we doing last time, and get back into character, and it's much easier if you're doing a weekly thing to not have to do that.
Yeah, we found that so when we finished out the Lucky Die, we had basically taken about 3 months, and then we did a big block of recording. And then I took a year off to work for a virtual tabletop company, and I did somewhere between it's a minimum of about 8 hours and a maximum of about 16 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week for about a year straight, because they paid incredibly well. I knew I would have to dedicate a lot of time to them because they're a startup company, and that's just what you do. And they paid well for it. Like that was the offshoot of it. I'm like, if I work really hard with them for over a year, I can afford enough money to pay the editor while I am working, and enough money to put aside so I can take at least a year off to focus on all of our podcast stuff in a very serious way, because I can put enough money aside to do that. And that's exactly what I did. So we ended up just having a year where we did not record the Lucky Die, and coming back to record what was essentially Two People's Last Night on Earth and the finale. That was tough because we had a year where I had to, basically coming back to it, I had to let people know, like, hey, please remember that these things are important from your characters, because it's been a while. Please know that you have certain things in your inventory because you should remember that you have these things. Please know that this was the plan that you had, and this is everything that's happened in the last 50 episodes, because your character should know these things. These should not be, hey, what did we do? And I probably spent nigh on half an hour catching everyone up on these are things that your characters did, these are the things that happened here, these things are important, these are things that you should remember and know, just so that we could get straight back into the story without having what feels like to listeners, hey, did they sound like they've just taken a year break? It was tough. And I so wish that we had the time to record before I had to take that year off to go work for this company, because I would love to have been able to finish it where it felt more coherent. But alas, these are the hands that we are dealt. And ultimately, it just came down to scheduling, because we have 2 people out in New York or New Jersey who worked the same days, work different days, which means that my partner and I, we had to essentially take 3 weeks off of work to record at midnight and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the morning, so that we could actually finish the finale. And I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we finished, but hell, if I ever want to record at that time in the morning again for such a long period of time, it absolutely screwed our body clocks up for weeks. It was entirely unfun. And also the time zone thing changed. Out in the US, you guys did the time change thing back in November or whatever it was, and it was right in the middle of our recording weeks. So 1 week you did that and the next week that. But Iceland doesn't respect time zone change, because what hours are we going to save? We either have 4 hours of daylight or we are almost 24 hours of daylight. So saving 1 hour makes no difference to us. So we then had another hour later of recording than we were the week before, and it was oh my god, I hate myself.
We all hate it here too. I don't know why we still do it.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a good idea back when it was brought in, but it's not really helpful now, especially when America and Europe do it on different weeks. So there's usually like a solid 3 weeks when our US contingent have gone forward or back an hour, and then a bit later the EU contingent go forward or back an hour. And ultimately we're all just screwed for those 3 weeks when we're like, I don't know, we're going to meet exactly this time in 1 week's time, so just figure it out. So yeah, it's always a nightmare.
Yeah. I actually had an interview with someone where we got the time wrong because of that problem, because it was scheduled for that little gap between when the US does the time change and Europe does the time change. Yeah. So I logged on at what I thought was the right time, and it was a different time for them because they hadn't changed yet. And yeah, it was frustrating.
So I appreciate what you did today, which is like, hey, we're good to meet in 45 minutes. I always do that around time zone change because I'm just like, I don't know when it is, and I'm just going to be ready an hour early.
Yes, exactly. All right. We're coming close to the end of my notes for talking with you. I wrote down something, Day of the Triffids, ? I don't remember what that was.
I love Day of the Triffids. When I was still at school, so kind of like mid-teens, one of the audiobooks I could get from the school library was Day of the Triffids, and it scared the bejesus out of me. A couple of years later, I found the old BBC series, not like the new one, which is kind of like 2000s onwards, like the old BBC series, which was Day of the Triffids, and it was amazing. Those plants scare the absolute hell out of me. When I lived in the UK, there was a plant at the end of my driveway, as you turn into the driveway, that was really tall and had a kind of the big red cup thing on top. That thing did not last very long because it was too much like a Triffid and scared the hell out of me. I love Day of the Triffids. It's so good. It's one of my, like, yes, this is as believable as you can get. It's written from like the point of view of like the journalist who is going through this, and it leaves it kind of ambiguous as to why and what everything is happening for. You just have to, this is the new situation and you just have to deal with it. Even if you figure out what the cause of this is, whether it's the comet, whether it was like, this, that or the other, you're never going to know. And ultimately, it doesn't matter because you will not be able to survive if you don't figure out how to survive. Like, the origin is not important right now. And I just really like it. Like, the stories that were included in the original book versus, like, the things that they added in the TV series, like, they're both gold. I'm not a huge fan of the remake series that the BBC did, but that's just me. I believe other people loved it.
Okay, so this is... I wasn't sure what it was. This is a show that also has, like, plant monster stuff.
Yeah. So the original book and the original series, TV series, they expect to see a bunch of comets in the sky one night, and pretty much the entire world like turns up to watch the night sky as the comets like scrape across the earth, and they're all blinded the next day. Anybody who saw the comets are completely blinded, and there was something in the comets that started making these giant triffids start moving. And these giant triffids would, use their root system to move around. They had a little like clicky sound to them. And they would just entangle people. They would hit them with like tendrils to kind of like stun them and paralyze them. And then they would consume them. Yeah, that's Day of the Triffids. That's the scary-ass monsters, and it tells the tale of a guy trying to get out of London who sets up in a place that's actually apparently not too far from where I used to live in the south of the UK, and ultimately they escape to the Isle of Wight. And all of the interesting people that they meet along the way, from like, essentially what are cultists, to, the military, to people just trying to live a good life with, the existence that they have now. So yeah, it's a really good and interesting series if you kind of like, you want to see a different kind of apocalypse that isn't just like straight up doom and gloom. It has like a very human core to it.
Mm-hmm. The comets thing was in Little Shop of Horrors too, I think.
I think you're right, yeah.
Or it was like a light from Venus or something. I don't remember exactly. But some celestial event.
Yeah. I'm not sure how the comets were supposed to relate to the plants. They left that very ambiguous, at least in Day of the Triffid. I think it was a bit more obvious in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah. That's where Audrey came from.
Yeah. Lean green machine from outer space.
Well, I think that's the end of my questions. Is there anything that you wish I'd asked or wanted to say?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, we talked a lot about podcasting in general and actual plays and role-playing systems. We talked a lot about the random system and the random world that is the sprouting. Yeah, no, I think, I could talk about this forever. I have so many backstories associated with this. I have so many weird little system things that I do with the players, and I cannot really shout enough about how amazing my players are. They are very, very good at what they do, from people who have played with me for over 10 years, longer than I have known my husband, to my husband playing, to my absolute best friend who has not played a lot of role-playing games ever, and watching the three of them come together is just amazing. And the stories that they're telling with their characters, I'm very proud to get them to help them tell those tales, and I'm excited to see where this goes with them. Yeah, I think that's the only thing I want to add. I love my players and they're amazing.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, always good to have a thank you. Well, I like to end with what GMing advice you'd give to other people that are listening.
Don't sweat it. If you are playing with your friends, remember that they're your friends. And if you minorly mess up, they aren't going to eat you for it. And if, like my home group, they drink while they play, they're not going to remember. Don't sweat it. Like, you're there to have as much fun as they are. Yeah, you probably have a lot more admin to do. You have a lot more creativity on your shoulders, and a lot of the tone of the game and whether people are having fun kind of falls on your shoulders. But it also falls on the shoulders of your players. It is up to them to engage. It is up to them not to be that player who rails against what is obviously the story. You're there to have fun. And NPCs can be, if you treat all of them like your PC, eventually you'll end up with some incredibly good characters that they can play with. So just don't sweat it. It'll be okay. And the worst that will happen is that you just have a dud session, and maybe you need to prep a little bit more. Maybe you need to prep a little bit less, but you're playing with your friends. Have fun. It's okay.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you. I agree.
I wish someone had told me that when I started.
There's
Sweating
so much
buckets when I first started playing.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much like it's a performance art and I have to be perfect, like, stage ready, when it's really just, nah, you're hanging out with your friends, just have fun.
Yeah, like the way that I prep and run games for my home group, they're a little different to how I prep for an actual play. Like, for an actual play, I have to think about the audience and things that they're hearing, because you can't see anything when you're doing an actual play as a podcast, as an audio podcast. But when I'm with my friends, I know that I don't have to think about reiterating things. I can draw terrible drawings and I can pretend to physically be a bear. I can't do that when I'm doing an actual play, because no one's going to see me pretending to be a bear.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, just, a lot of fun when you're at home. You don't have to be like, professional GM. You don't have to do voices. There's so many shortcuts that you can use. And yeah, ultimately, your friends will judge you as your friend, that nothing more.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ham. Do you want to tell people where they can see The Sprouting or Lucky Die or any of your other shows?
Oh, you can find any of our podcasts, The Sprouting podcast, The Lucky Die. You can find those just by searching those. You'll find them in Google. You'll find them on your podcatchers of choice. You'll find them on YouTube. If you want to find the umbrella of stuff that we do, search blighthouse.studio. That has both of our actual plays. That has our scripted audio fictions, which is a fantasy called Counterbalance, and follows three characters who are really flawed, trying to fix the hole in magic. It's about to have an isekai, which is freaking badass, about a guy who gets stuck in his own video game, and it's so good. I'm so excited for that to come out. And we have a non-fiction show called 4 Top 3s, which is just 4 friends from 4 different countries, arguably 4 different languages. You think American and British are different languages. Yeah. And yeah, all the other projects that are about to come out, including a zombie game that I have not prepped for, and we're recording in a month's time.
Oh, wow. Yeah. All sorts of stuff that I will have to ask you for links to put in the episode description.
Absolutely. Send me a list of things that you want me to send you, and I'll send them your way.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Sam. This has been really cool hearing about the the sprouting and all the other fun things that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for chatting with me about this. I could talk role-playing and actual plays and podcasting and this whole weird little niche we do for hours. So thank you for being precise and keeping it roughly at 2 hours.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed that episode with him, you can listen to more of their work on the Lighthouse Studio. They do a bunch of different podcasts. There's links in the description to The Sprouting and Lighthouse Studio for the other ones, and The Lucky Die. And also, they're all on your podcast apps where you're listening to this, so check it out. It's really cool stuff. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode, then please consider subscribing and giving us a nice review. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you to Darren, our Patreon supporter. If you want to be a Patreon supporter, then you get access to episodes early. You can suggest questions to ask the different guests that we have on the show. And you also get episodes ad-free, which is pretty cool. So, consider subscribing. And if you don't, well, still, thank you for listening.